In other words, he wasn't going to say anything on the basis that anything he might say might incriminate him. Now, this is the guy where I'd focus my attention. Absolutely focus my attention. What was this guy? What was his background? What was his role coming onto the rig 4 days before the event? And the first place I'd look to see whether he's Phi Beta Kappa. Because Phi Beta Kappa, as I've discussed in previous presentations here at the symposium, is a brotherhood, a fraternity that has its tentacles all throughout the industrial military complex in the US. And it's all benign until such time as you get the phone call, and then you are expected to do whatever your superior within the fraternity asks you to do. Now, one of my former colleagues, a guy called David Hawkins, who is also a researcher based in the US, he has put forward the suggestion that there is a distinct possibility that the cement was actually sabotaged and that there was a possibility of ammonium nitrate being added to the cement mix, which would, of course, made it extremely volatile. Now, that's pure conjecture on his part, but he said it would certainly explain why the cement wasn't holding the casing. This was the article that appeared on the day after I came back from Peru, and it says, BP should consider detonating an atomic bomb to plug its oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico, nuclear experts have suggested. Well, the Russians did this in the 1960s to plug a gas well. Why do you think they've never done it again? They're still paying the price for it. Big time. I mean, the radioactivity is leaking all over the place. So this was the article that appeared, and it was really the first article I saw. Look where it is, page 37. Page 37 of the Daily Mail on Saturday, July 3rd. And I say, I'd literally just come back from Peru, and I planned that trip to Peru 9 months previously. And the reason I wanted to go to Peru was because part of my research is to look at mythology and certainly the belief systems and knowledge, wisdom, and awareness of the indigenous peoples. And I had this opportunity to join up with Alberto Velodo and spend 3 weeks or 2 weeks in the Andes and then 1 week in the Amazon. But the primary purpose was to spend the time with the Laika, who are the ancient wisdom keepers of the Inca. Now, these guys were lost to the world for 400-odd years because as the wisdom keepers, they had been aware that they were at risk from the attacks of the conquistadors, and they ran up into the mountains. And everybody assumed that they'd been caught and killed. But actually, they were living at 16,500 feet up in the Andes. And then in early 1960s, they came out of the mountains. Nobody knew they were still alive. They came out of the mountains. And they're immediately recognizable by their very colorful hats and ponchos. And when asked why it was they come out of the mountains, they said, we have to come out of the mountains because all the knowledge, the wisdom, and the prophecy that we hold, the people of the lower world need to know about. That's why anthropologists like Alberto Velodo have been crawling all over these people for the last 40 years because of the significance of their knowledge. It's unadulterated. And a big part of what they have to say is that the earth has to go through a purification process. It has to go through a rebirth. And these guys live in balance with nature. I hate to use that phrase because, of course, that's straight off the Georgia Guidestones. But they live in balance with nature. They worship the Pachamama, the Apus, the mountains. But everything about their life is in balance with nature. They take nothing more than what they need. And they give back as much as they possibly can. So I was sharing some exchanges with these guys. There was a young girl. She was 38. It was young for me. She was 38, and she spoke good English, so I was able to work with her as a translator. And some of the insights that they shared, and I have to obviously question how much is original and how much they've sort of latched onto because the anthropologists have been all over them for 40 years. But one of the things that they certainly believe, and according to Alberto, have always believed, is that the Earth will reduce the number of people on the planet, but it would do it her way, Pachamama's way. But they also believe it doesn't have to be like that. They take the line that a prophecy is a prophecy. It's a heads up. And if the prophecy comes about, it's, fool me once, more fool us for ignoring it. And, of course, there's a lot of it about. This from the Hopi. I think this was related by Chief Sitting Bear. I'm not going to go through the whole lot, but, a key part of this is the sea turns black, killing many living things. And then many youth who wear their hair long, like our people, come to the tribal nations to learn our ways and wisdom. Well, anybody who hasn't got an allotment, could well be in for a world of hurt. Did you see what was happening in the film? Some of that crop damage was in Ohio. The oil rain is already reaching Georgia. So this stuff isn't localized into the Gulf. How much of that Corexit is getting sucked up into the upper atmosphere and being transported by the tropical storms and the hurricane systems? We don't know. We're all part of a big experiment right now. And everybody on the inside is taking their holiday in Maine. From Revelation, and the second angel sounded his trumpet, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. Of course, that's from a text that's been completely butchered by these guys. But as this is the last but one pope, we know that, of course, thanks to the wonderful prophecies of the St. Malachi, the 12th century monk. But there's another amazing coincidence. I told you about April the 19th being the first day of Beltane, the day of sacrifice by fire. Guess what day this guy was elected pope? 19th of April, 2005. Incredible. As you heard Jason say this morning, what's happening right now is an attack, a multi-dimensional, multi-pronged attack on humanity. And it hasn't even started yet. The property crash hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened. It's coming. It's just a reluctance of people to recognize that, it's tanked. It's far worse in the US. The financial crash hasn't happened yet. And I stood here on the same platform in July 2007 and said, the coming financial disaster is just around the corner. And people are saying, no, it's not. No. House prices are going to keep going up. 1 month later, Northern Rock crashed. That was the start. But that's nothing. The real crash is probably going to happen between September 15th, or September the 11th, rather, and November 15th this year. And there's a desperation to tank the dollar and introduce the Amero. And by the way, the legislators are getting smart because now they're introducing legislation in bills that have completely different names. So you'd never think of looking for a problem in a particular bill. In the US healthcare bill, buried deep in there is the introduction of a taxation on gold coins to come into effect from January the 1st, 2012. In the healthcare bill, you'd never think of looking for it there, would you? The bank crash, I've said for the last 3 years, basically the money... If you have nothing, you're in great shape, by the way. You're absolutely in great shape. That's the best position to be in. Okay. And the way in which we need to really move on from here is that the Federal Reserve has to be wiped out. The Rockefellers, who are behind, obviously, the Federal Reserve and the Rothschilds, it just needs to be shut down. And I read just a few days ago that Michigan has announced that it is no longer going to take any bullshit from the Federal Reserve and it's going to start printing its own currency. The downside of that, of course, is that the governor of Michigan now has a big target on his head. Every US president who said exactly the same thing was either assassinated. I think Andrew Jackson was the only one to actually survive the assassination attempt. And the same with the Bank of England. The Bank of England is supposedly nationalised. In which case, why are we paying ourselves $71 billion in interest every year? We should just wipe out the debt. It's nationalised, so wipe out the debt. Why? Because it's no more nationalised than the Federal Reserve. But, here it is, again, the truth is being told. In fact, the media is becoming increasingly arrogant in telling us the truth. A few years ago, you'd never see the whole truth. Now they're just putting it out there because they know that people are basically so dumbed down that they can put this stuff in there and people are just going to go, oh, okay. All right. What's on Coronation? Oh, God. By the way, there's an event later this year that's really going to get everybody's attention, I promise you. There's an event coming later this year that will really get everybody spellbound. Because it was announced just about 10 days ago that one of the scripts on Coronation Street is that a tram is going to crash off the top of that viaduct and it's going to kill a whole bunch of people working below.